Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am so happy that you wanted to join me today because today I am doing another quite requested video. I'm going to be talking about myths about zero waste and generally misperceptions and misinterpretations and generally just, I guess, things many people think is zero waste that is actually not. But before we get started, this video is also sponsored. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, and if you don't know Skillshare at this point, I have been partnering up with them all 2020 and I've been loving it. It has been the perfect partnership for this year. Am I right? Skillshare is an online learning community where you can basically learn well, yeah, everything. And I have been looking into drawing again. I drew a lot when I was younger, then I sort of just stopped. But Skillshare gave me sort of the courage, the inspiration to go and give it a try again. So now I'm drawing again. It's really, really cool. And since you need a lot of, like technical know-how to do a lot of things, there's so many amazing guide tutorials and classes on how to draw with watercolor, and I've been loving those. I'm also using one of the courses to draw my homemade zero waste greeting cards this year. Yay! So if you're interested in Skillshare, I suggest going down below. There is a link, and the first 1,000 people to click it will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. So thank you so much for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get into it. The first myth is obviously that calling yourself zero waste means that you always produce absolutely zero waste. And people going into zero waste, people practicing zero waste, produce and generate different amounts of waste, obviously. And it sounds misleading that the zero waste movement is actually not about everyone producing absolutely zero waste. Honestly, and I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but you cannot be completely zero waste in a society, in a structure that's not designed for it. It's intensely difficult and it puts a lot of pressure on the consumer to be perfect in a world that's not designed for that perfection. So I wouldn't sweat it too much. When I started zero waste, I was very focused on perfection and the fact that every day I should produce absolutely no waste. So I spent a lot of energy trying to achieve that, and I was stressed out and nauseous and depressed a lot of the time. Okay, maybe those words are harsh, okay. But I was indeed very focused on being perfect. I was very focused on doing everything right. For instance, whenever I was at restaurants, I asked, please no straw. I don't need it. And sometimes I got it anyway and I would feel physically nauseous because then I wasn't zero waste. Expecting to be completely zero waste is also expecting to have control over every situation in your life, and you don't. You cannot control what other people bring into your apartment, for instance, and that's something I have experienced many times when Jens and I have get-togethers or small parties. If people bring their own booze, they usually bring it in a plastic bag, and then they sometimes leave the plastic bag. And a couple of years ago, I would probably have spent a lot of energy making sure that people took their plastic bag with them again. But that is an absolutely silly way to spend your energy and time. Like, that's not the point of zero waste. The zero waste movement is therefore not about producing absolutely zero waste. It's a movement that promotes a conscious relationship with waste, so you do not consume mindlessly and generate waste without thinking about it. It is a way of appreciating resources and using them in the most efficient way possible, thus producing less waste. But there's no zero in zero waste. I started filming this video when the light outside was just absolutely perfect and then it went away, so now we are in ring light city. The second myth is that zero trash in your bin means that you're zero waste. I have talked about this in many other contexts as well, but to me and to many other people, and generally sustainability and zero waste is not only about the physical waste you generate that you can see in front of you. I thought I was the #perfect zero waster when I went to the butcher shop and the cheese shop and I got these animal products in my own container and brought it home. That was zero waste because there was no trash in my bin. It's the same thing with flying. You're not necessarily going on a zero waste flight just because you avoid the prepared meal on the plane. There's so much more than the physical trash we can see in front of us, and actually the invisible impact is much, much bigger than the one that goes in our bin. So just because there's no trash in your bin doesn't mean there wasn't any trash related to a service, an item, product. You catch my drift? It is expensive to live zero waste. I would actually say have yes and have no, because it really depends on how you go about it. Because zero waste to me is about using a lot of the things you already have. It's about looking for solution and resources that doesn't cost you anything and that you already have lying around your home or that are free. But Because of sustainability being something that is being talked about more and more, because it's been incorporated into a global discourse, there are tons of new companies popping up everywhere. While many of the companies have really good intentions and are doing a lot of good, there are also some companies out there who is not necessarily as into sustainability as they're into making money. So there's a lot of products that are generally more expensive than they have any goddamn right to be. And if those are pushed and promoted to consumers like this is the way to be zero waste, this is the way to be sustainable, then it's going to look more expensive, because then it obviously is. But you don't necessarily have to buy any of these products to be zero waste or sustainable. Another thing is that the average consumer is accustomed to a certain price level on many things, and producing things sustainably in contrast to unsustainably does cost more money, because more resources have to be used and there are more aspects of the supply chain that needs to be worked on. So some items are just more expensive because they are sustainable, because sustainable practices does cost money. But I think one of the main things here is that if we do all the things that we normally did pre-zero waste or pre-trying to be sustainable, if we did all of those things still and just added new things on top of it, you wouldn't be able to afford your new things. But if you have a gradual change in the way you spend your money, if you stop buying a lot of things, if you stop supporting a lot of companies, you will suddenly have room to pay a little bit more. When I stopped buying new electronics, when I stopped impulse shopping, I suddenly had a lot more money left over, and I could use that money to pay a little bit more for a certain brand of cooking oil or for a certain brand of rice that were more sustainable. Of course, this is also set from a position of privilege where I have a budget that's big enough to move things around. That is not always the case, and in that case, being sustainable or being zero waste would also involve simply just using what you already have at home rather than buying new things. Number 4, oh, this is one of my favorites. You have to store all your trash in a mason jar. No, I haven't stored my trash in a mason jar. There's a really good reason for that. I do definitely believe that the trash jar is the skinny supermodel of zero waste. Change my mind. The thing is, I had a video where I sort of tried to collect all my trash for a week, and it went really well because I don't produce a lot of trash still, but I don't feel the need to have it in a mason jar, to portray it like that. But I also think it creates an unattainable standard or goal for what zero waste should be, and sometimes it ends up being more discouraging than actually inspirational. You feel it was one of the first things I saw and experienced about zero waste was this trash jar, and it got my attention, it catched my eye, and I really loved it for that. But I don't want to do it myself. I want to talk about waste in another way that doesn't press this ideal of perfection down people's throats, because zero waste is not always getting all your trash in a mason jar. Again, because you cannot control every situation in your life. I don't think we need this sort of almost like competitive waste avoidance. So yeah, you don't need to carry your trash around in a mason jar. This one is fun. Zero waste is about recycling more. Well, I actually think zero waste is about recycling less, because zero waste is a general avoidance of trash in general, also recyclables. So if you can avoid using something, you should. Generally, I think recycling is a great place to start, but a bad place to stop. So with reducing the amount of waste you produce, you will also start reducing the amount of recyclables that you have. So in that sense, it's actually also about avoiding trash that will be recycled. Also because recycling systems are not always perfect, so putting all your trust in this one system is not necessarily a great idea. If there is an alternative, like using a reusable product or using something you already have at home, etc, etc. So zero waste is not always about recycling everything that you have. Of course, you should recycle the stuff that you do have so it doesn't end up in landfill. But recycling and the opportunity to recycle is not in any shape, way or form a zero waste excuse to use something. I hope that makes sense. Next myth is that it is time consuming to be zero waste. And again, I'm leaning towards no, but I also understand yes, because I sure as hell spend a lot of time going zero waste. Because I wanted to do everything. I wanted to do my own makeup, and I wanted to make my own cleaning agents, and I wanted to research all of the important things. And because this is now also my job, I spend a lot of time on zero waste and generally on sustainability, but I try to do that so you don't have to do the same thing. So information is more accessible, you know? So, but yeah, it is definitely a possibility that you end up spending a lot of time on sustainability once you go into it. but you don't necessarily have to. You can also do things that fits into your schedule. You don't have to do everything at once. So it's really what you make it out to be. And if you only have time to do certain things in your kitchen and not really do anything in your bathroom, then do the kitchen things and then come back to the bathroom some other time. Living zero waste will make your life look like a Pinterest aesthetics board. No, I have some places in my house where I feel like I'm sort of aesthetics, like my background when I'm filming, I really love that. But there are other parts of zero waste that is not necessarily super aesthetic. One of the things that I think is a giant misconception is that we all use the same, completely similar mason jars and everything is lined up and perfectly symmetrical and stuff like that. No, honey. And zero waste can be many things. It can also be using those Tupperware containers that you bought 20 years ago and that you still use. That is just as zero waste as using a glass jar. And honestly, it's more zero waste than going out and purchasing new glass simply just to use it for the zero waste aesthetic. So no, zero waste does not always look like an aesthetics Pinterest board. It can look many different ways, and the misperception that it has to be beautiful, I think, is something that also nudges us consumers to go out and buy something to obtain that, and we don't have to at all. Consumer action does not matter. Every time I'm out giving a lecture, basically every time there's someone who is going to point out to me that I'm not saving the world by avoiding plastic bags. And obviously, I know that. But consumer action does actually matter quite a lot. And although we have three parts of responsibility when it comes to sustainability, we have the consumers, we have the industry, and we have politics. And those three have to work together in order to really make something happen and in order to really inspire change. But we consumers do have an incredibly large voice because the industry produces products that they know will be sold. So if we stop buying certain products, then the industry will change in order to meet consumer demands. Obviously, this issue is a lot more complex than just that, and there's many things we can look into. But my point is here simply that consumer action actually does matter quite a bit. And I have just already seen, just from me going zero waste and just by me trying to be more sustainable, you're planting seeds every time you talk about it, every time you show it to someone, every time someone watches you do something, and it becomes like rings in water and we start inspiring each other. It's really important, and we do have an incredibly large voice, especially when influencing each other. So simply just brushing zero waste and consumer consciousness off and saying, well, it doesn't do anything anyway, so I might as well not do it, I think is simply false. We have already talked about this a little bit, but when you go zero waste, do you have to throw away all your plastic belongings? No, you don't have to throw away anything to go zero waste. That's sort of the entire point. But because people want this certain zero waste aesthetic, we often end up trying to get rid of certain things in order to make room for new things. But you don't have to do that at all. And if you like your plastic cutlery, and if you like your plastic kitchen utensils and your plastic bowls and everything like that, you don't have to throw them away. I have exchanged certain items in my household and bought new secondhand items, but I did that gradually by giving it to people I knew would really want these other items, so they didn't have to go out and buy new things. So in that regard, you can do it, but you don't have to get rid of anything to be zero waste at all. Zero waste living is always minimalist. While a lot of zero waste content is also minimalist content, and while there's a great overlap between these two things, you don't have to be minimalist to be zero waste, and you don't especially have to have this sort of minimalist aesthetic vibe. Like, no, you don't have to. Specifically, I'm referring to stuff like clothing, style, and fashion. That's always kind of minimalist, and the way that people live, home decor, generally interior, also very minimalistic, and you don't have to be that at all. I am the furthest from a minimalist. Like, everything about both my clothing style and my house is not minimalist whatsoever, but I would refer to some of it as like true materialist, because I'm not materialistic in the sense that I just need to accumulate a lot of stupid things, but the things that I do have and the things that I do acquire, I want to be good quality, something that can last me a long time. I'm really focused on the material. So in that regard, I think sometimes, at least for me, it's the complete opposite of minimalism. In that sense, I have never really liked minimalism either, so you don't have to either if that's not your jam. If it is your jam, that's also completely fine, but I don't necessarily think that they have to go together, although they do it quite well. I think zero waste and minimalism are often overlapping, because with zero waste you also reduce a lot of the things that are unnecessary. You do the same things in minimalism, but you don't have to fit into this certain mold and get rid of a lot of your things because now you can only own 50 things or whatnot. That's not how it works whatsoever. And I have gotten a lot of comments about how I don't look zero waste, how like my life and like everything about this do not necessarily have that zero waste feel, and I think that's what they're referring to. But again, it's not mandatory. Okay, you have to be completely vegan to be zero waste. When I started zero waste, I wasn't vegan, but I was also on the another end of the spectrum that wasn't very good for me at all. When I say you don't have to be vegan to be zero waste, I mean that in a broader sense. Like eating meat every single day and being zero waste, I don't think works necessarily that well together, especially if that meat comes from factory farming. It doesn't work well together at all, because then we have sort of the problematic of only looking at the physical trash we have in front of us and then ignoring all the other impact that's going on right behind us. That's not necessarily a very conscious way to live. So I definitely do feel like you have to at least reconsider your relationship with meat if you want to be more sustainable, especially if you support factory farming, because I don't think factory farming and sustainability and zero waste go together at all. But when I say you don't have to be completely vegan to be zero waste, I mean that in a broader sense. Like if you're at a restaurant and you order a vegan meal and then accidentally there's mayo in it, I think it's fine to eat it anyway, because if you're very focused on waste, then it would be bad if that thing went completely to waste. You know what I mean? So having the option of eating it even though you intended to eat something that was vegan. Same with dumpster diving. I don't necessarily see anything wrong with being freegan, aka, you know, a person that's normally vegan, but then they dumpster dive or eat things that would normally have been thrown away, even though it wasn't vegan. I think that is also a sustainable choice. So in my opinion, veganism and zero waste does not always go completely hand in hand, and one is not mandatory with the other, but I don't think it makes sense to not reconsider your relationship with meat and dairy when you're trying to be more sustainable, because animal agriculture and specifically factory farming has a huge impact on the planet. So not looking into that, I also don't think makes a lot of sense. And lastly, anyone can go zero waste. While I do think that anyone can reduce their impact and anyone can use things more times, some things more times, or use things they have at home, or bring certain items, I don't think zero waste is a universally easy or attainable experience. And I think it's important to remember within the sustainability community that some people have less privilege and less opportunity and less budget to work with, and some people have disabilities that make it really, really difficult to avoid disposables. And all of these things as something we need to consider whenever we talk about this universal accessibility of zero waste. But again, because I definitely believe that zero waste can look tons of different ways, there are things that we can do in individual fields and aspects, and they don't have to be the same all the time. So while I don't think necessarily that everyone can do all the same things that I do, and I don't have the perception that because something is easy for me, it's just as easy for everyone else, because I know that's not true. But I do think that we all can strive towards being better, and I think we all can strive towards being more sustainable. And that might look many, many different ways. I hope all of this made sense. If you want to watch more videos where I sort of expand on this a little bit more, I have a video about eco-ableism, and I have a video about my story with veganism and sort of how everything went about. So if you want to watch any of this, I will leave all the relevant videos down below, but you can also go and explore my channel on your own, of course. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I hope you're going to have a great day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green zero waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!